Maybach, a brand associated with luxury longer than any other. A name that invokes the ideas of luxury, opulence, richness, and soft nappa leather on your butt cheeks. Maybach is a brand so intertwined with luxury as caviar is to a posh dinner, or gold to a steak at Salt Bays. No? Don't worry, no one else was convinced in 1997 either. Now that's not to say that Wilhelm Maybach didn't have a massive effect on luxury and the auto industry. It just wasn't the bullshit that Mercedes-Benz were trying to feed us back in 1997 when they launched the 57 and the 62 Maybachs, which can stand as some of the biggest disasters of luxury cars ever in terms of sales. But you know what? After making that initial mistake with the Maybach brand, Mercedes have come back with a much better idea. Let's take that brand and make it a sub-brand just like Mercedes AMG or the G-Wagon or the EQ cars. And now Maybach is starting to work. And so it should, because frankly speaking, the modern automobile would not be the way it is if it wasn't for that man, Wilhelm Maybach. And I'm going to tell you all about the true history of Maybach today, rather than the rose-tinted glasses one that Mercedes has told us in the past. So let's dive in, let's check that out. And then I've got the flagship Maybach for you guys today. It is the V12 powered S-Class Maybach in all its glory here in Patagonia Red. It looks fantastic. Is it a car that you should sell your Rolls-Royce for? That's a question that we're going to ask. Is it ever going to be luxurious enough being a trim level of an S-Class? I've got some ideas about this, and I'm not only going to sit in the rear seat, I'm going to drive the thing as well, because this is remove before race and we have to drive. So let's take a look at all these topics, let's drive it, let's sit in it, let's talk about the history, and check out this, the brand new Mercedes Maybach S-Class. So guys, today's episode of RBR is sponsored by my favorite wallet company, The Ridge. Why are they my favorites? Because like you guys, I love carbon fiber, and they make simply the best carbon fiber wallets that I've ever seen. Look at that, matches exactly your car. You can get the forged one as well. Now with slim wallets, I'm usually used to this type of one. Yes, I'm a bit of a tart with the brand, but these can only hold 5, 6 cards maybe, whereas in the Ridge, you can get up to 12 cards plus cash within the cash strap here. I also love that when I put it in my pocket, it doesn't bulge at all, it's super slim. And it's got RFID blocking technology, so no one can take money out of any of my cards. Now, of course, I've got a discount for you guys. All you need to do is go to theridge.com/RBR, use the code RBR. You'll get 10% off one of these awesome carbon wallets. Help support the channel as well, and you'll have something super stylish and something that matches lovely motorsport cars. So go to ridge.com/RBR. So guys, to discuss Maybach would be a folly without discussing the man himself, Wilhelm Maybach. And as I said, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the modern Mercedes-Benz, in fact, the modern motor vehicle, would not look the way it was if it wasn't for this man's technical innovations in the space. So, Gottlieb Daimler and Maybach set up the Daimler Motor Company together. And the first ever Mercedes was made in 1901. It was designed by Maybach himself, and it was very, very different to the common motor car back then. So what can he be credited with when this man was known as the king of designers? And he really deserved it. He made the first ever V-shaped engine. He made a whole host of car radiator designs, some of which survive even till today. He made the first ever truck, and he made a whole host of engines, the most famous one perhaps in the Mercedes 35. Now, this was the first ever car to have the Mercedes name, and it was very special. First of all, the name is a famous story that many people know. It was named after a very beautiful young lady who was actually the daughter of a Mercedes customer called Emil Jellinek, who helped support this particular vehicle in coming to life. He wanted a sportier vehicle, less clunky than the typical motor car back then, and Maybach had ideas. He had ideas of a car with a longer wheelbase, with a wider track, where you sat lower, less horse and carriage, more modern motor car. And that's where the Mercedes 35 came in. It had an unheard of 35 brake horsepower back then, and a shape that nobody was really used to. And this formed the basis then for Daimler to make their Mercedes cars going forward because it was such a big success. But Daimler Motor Company, or DMG as it was known in Germany, was a different animal back then. Though it was set up by Daimler and Maybach concurrently, when it ran into a financial crisis, they got financiers who were into munitions and weren't really interested in car making, so they were more interested in making engines for commercial use. And it was kind of around the time that Daimler died in 1900 that Maybach lost his best partner in the firm, and he pulled away from Daimler at that point, despite the success of the Mercedes 35. And he set up his own company, which was the Maybach engine production company, essentially, focusing mainly on engines. And it wasn't until a decade later that he created the first road car, which was very much still in the vein of our modern Maybach. It was an ultra-high luxury car for the rich, and it did very well in Germany. The most famous one was called the Maybach Zeppelin, because he used to make engines mainly for those large Zeppelins as well. But then World War II happened and the Maybach name went dormant for essentially decades, until 1997, when Mercedes had this idea of concocting this idea of a luxury brand out of Maybach's achievements. And we all know how that story went. It came with these two new luxury saloons, which were the Maybach 57 and the Maybach 62, the names or the numbers denoting from the meterage length of the vehicles or something along those lines. And they did their absolute best to make this a success, with like glass box unveil delivery in New York. You had all kinds of ambassadors, including the heir to Maybach, and Will Smith drove it, and Jay-Z drove it, and all kinds of celebs got involved. It was in rap videos and everything. And you have to understand Mercedes' thinking. It was correct. There was a void at that time because Rolls-Royce was having a re-emergence under BMW, and Bentley wasn't there. And there was this whole void for the luxury cars segment that they tried to fill with this new brand. But the problem was that they already had the S-Class. That was a fantastic car. And while the Maybach was good, it wasn't more expensive than a Rolls-Royce good. And that's where the whole thing came unstuck, where they were opening loads of dealerships in the US and expecting 2,000 sales per year in their major markets. They were winding up with something like 100 to 200 per vehicle and losing something to the tune of $400,000 per vehicle delivered in the end, I believe. So when we talk about a sales disaster, Maybach was really it. And it needed a total rethinking. It also didn't help that Mercedes-Benz press at the time didn't let the journalists drive the damn thing. They insisted that you sit in the rear. If someone ever said that to me, I would tell them to sling their hook, because that is a ridiculous notion in any type of car. And then in 2014, Mercedes announced that Maybach would be coming back as a sub-brand called Mercedes Maybach, much in the same way as Mercedes AMG is a sub-brand providing driving performance and sportiness to your standard Mercedes cars. Maybach was going to do the same for our luxury car segment. And they started off by tiptoeing into it, I think. So they took the S-Class and they made a Mercedes Maybach version of it. Essentially, it was a S-Class SE body with some chrome strips, at least on the outside, and some different wheels. Very little money spent on the outside, certainly. The inside, of course, very impressive, because they are very good at that, and both the 57 and the 62 were great in that regard. So it had a lot of opulence on the interior, but the exterior, I think they were playing it safe, just to see how it goes. And who can blame them after that massive disaster? But this formula was actually a sales success. Customers, and you guys, the audience, you're very smart. You know when you're being sold bullshit. But here, Mercedes simply accepted the fact that they have arguably the best car in the world in the S-Class, and all they had to do was make it more luxurious and more suited for someone looking for that higher level of luxury. And that is essentially what the Mercedes Maybach brand does. So the first one, they played it safe. They had a bit of a facelift, which added a bit more Maybach flavor. Then they got serious, and we have the GLS Maybach as an example. This takes an unlikely Mercedes and adds that Maybach formula, just as you would with an AMG. And again, a sales hit, adding that wonderful Maybach style interior and the executive rear seats into the car, and the typical Maybach looks on the front. This is now working. And then we come to our car today, the W223 S-Class, now with the Maybach treatment. And it looks fantastic. Let's first talk about the design. That front end looks amazing. It is Maybach specific, you won't get it. It's not shared with some SE S-Class or anything like that. We've got the specific Maybach grille the specific lower bumper as well. Lots of use of chrome, as you would expect in Maybach, but still the Mercedes star, not the double M. So I like that. And I like the fact that you've got the concept grille style like we saw in the Vision coupes. This really works for me. And similar to the concept, you have that unique bonnet with the chrome line going through the middle, again, which looks great. You come on the side, your typical Maybach B and C pillar and the entire window surround in a very nice chrome finish. And then you've got the Maybach badge on the C pillar as well. Unique Maybach wheels, of course. And you flip the car around and look at the rear. And again, specific Maybach exhausts, but nothing too different on the rear because it's not trying to be a different vehicle, it's trying to be a more opulent S-Class. And of course, technology, more coming in this. I'll show you that when we take a look at the inside of the car. The other thing I wanted to do for you guys was compare it side by side with our brand new S-Class, just to show you the fact that you actually do get bang for buck when you go for the S Maybach. You can see particularly on the front end, not just the grille, but the lower bumper, and particularly that bonnet with the gorgeous chrome strip going through the middle of it and its own unique shape, give the Maybach its own character. Of course you have the wheels, but what I found even more interesting seeing them side by side was how the window line on the normal S-Class was a lot sharper as it finishes at the C-pillar, but with the Maybach, you actually have a rounder and actually a totally different shape to that rear window, which is nice. Again, it sets that car apart from your standard S-Class. On the rear, they're really quite similar, other than the exhaust, which again, a really nice touch. Of course, it helps if you get a nice bright color like this as well, but overall, you really do tell the Maybach apart from the normal S. Of course, rear space, the most important thing on Maybach, so this car is of course longer than your long wheelbase S-Class at a whole 18 centimeters longer. All of that goes to your rear passengers, and we will check that out later. Of course, all of the technical innovations of S-Class continue into Maybach, though they didn't have to change much in terms of the suspension, which should betray just how good the standard S-Class is. So the rear wheel steering is in the new Maybach as well, shortens the wheelbase in smaller turns by 2 meters, almost to the level of an A-Class, which is crazy. You still get the 16 airbags within here, all of the safety features, the digital light that projects warning signs and the width of the vehicle onto the road. But all of this is normal S-Class. What you don't get in a normal S-Class is a V12 engine. Yes, while AMG said that they're no longer making V12s, Mercedes Maybach never made that promise. That returns in this with 612 brake horsepower, 900 plus Newton meters of torque, but none of that really matters for Maybach. What it does have is a Maybach specific driving mode. We also have an S680 V8 hybrid version that you can get as well. It's got less brake horsepower at just around 500 brake, but again, a good option for Maybach customers because power and performance not as important as the luxury element. Speaking of the luxury element, let's jump in. Right guys, so inside the new Maybach. Sorry about this, it's actually raining, as you can see. It's quite horrible last few days of filming. Life is better in a bikini. This is actually a remnant from an old pressed, what was it actually? It was Paris Motor Show actually. I had this hat. I miss motor shows. Feels like another lifetime. Anyway, inside the new Maybach. Now in comparison to what you saw in the normal S-Class, this feels so different. I'm so glad I got to see them back to back because it really emphasizes, even for the driver where, you know, sitting in the front really isn't what the Maybach is all about. But you do see an immediate difference. The trim particularly is quite nice. I like the flowing lines within the piano black here. This is a very, very Maybach thing. It's a very Gordon Wagner thing. And that simplicity of design with the ambient lighting, with, again, the wood on the steering wheel, and this is the classic steering wheel as opposed to the AMG Line 1, which I think is the right decision. Although I think it'd be even better if Maybach had a totally separate one, but that's a different discussion altogether. You have got a Maybach logo within the spoke here, which is quite nice. Obviously a leather trimmed center airbag. And this feels nice, you know, it feels more luxury focused as it should versus the normal S-Class. Now the driver zone inside, lovely. You've got a unique Maybach startup screen with the Maybach logos. You also have, of course, a unique Maybach driving zone. This is based on the exclusive one that you get in the normal S-Class, but of course it's got more rose gold all around it. You see this little like jet engine design on the inside. There's so many lovely textures on Mercedes screens, isn't there? And this is why they are decades ahead of anyone else in terms of digital screens. I like the Maybach screen. It's nice, it translates onto the main screen here as well. You put on the 3D mode and everything is that much more legible, and it looks kind of like an analog screen now with those balls kind of floating in the air, and you're more able to read the information on there thanks to the fact that it is 3D, so it's not just 3D for the sake of adding 3D, if you like. Main screen, as I said, has the same type of design on there. It works essentially exactly the same as the normal S-Class, other than a few more features like sharing content from the front to the rear, opening the rear door so the driver can do that for the passenger, as you will see. But apart from that, MBUX essentially doing the exact same thing as you would find. One cool thing about this though, in terms of the driver, is if you go into the dynamic select mode, if we turn the car on for a second, let's acknowledge the fact that it's a V12, but you can't really hear anything because this isn't meant to be an AMG of any sort. The engine is more a tool for a purpose in the Maybach. It's about, actually it does sound good, doesn't it? Not bad. But the more interesting driving mode in this is Comfort Maybach, where you get the drive program of Maybach and the suspension settings of Maybach, which I'm very, very excited to try out. That should be pretty exciting. So we're going to see what that's like in the back. The Comfort Maybach design for the drive mode is also all rose gold with like a little diamond as well. I mean, he's just thrown rose gold everywhere. He's gone wild, Gordon Wagner, on this car. But yeah, the seats, I mean, the seats are incredible. Softest Mercedes Nappa I've ever felt. 3 times softer, I think, than when we get in a normal S-Class or an AMG. I didn't even realise there was a difference. Even the pillows, much lighter and softer than the normal S-Class. I'd love to know what's in there. If I find out, I'll let you know. Really, really nice. It's a level above. It feels that way. It feels so relaxing in here. I've only had a few hours sleep. I think I could take a kip. But I'll tell you what, the best place if you want to take a kip is actually in the rear. So guys, we are now going to do a very typical journey for me, which is off to go and get some coffee, because I've not had anything since this morning, and the fact that I'm stringing sentences together is actually quite an achievement. So I'm actually going to go into the MBUX screen here, and I'm going to put in the navigation for Costa Coffee so our driver knows where to go. So there we go, I've inputted the destination, and that should have arrived in David's navigation in front. Is that right?
Yes, it has.
Brilliant, look at that, simple. In fact, I could have, to be honest, I could have used MBUX voice assistant to do that. Maybe we'll try that after I've gotten my drink. But first, caffeine. Caffeine powers first. Right guys, so I'm back with my drink. Actually looks pretty okay. There was a heart shape on here previously. If you guys can see that, it's not as heart shaped anymore. But I can open this up. So begins the interior review. How cool is that? Look at that. It's fantastic. You only find that in S-Class. Now, the benefit of getting a drink is A, I can actually get some caffeine and wake up, and B, we can see how stable is the Maybach for someone who wants to drink something. Because we talk a lot about champagne glasses in Maybachs, but really, we're going to be consuming coffee, because if someone's sitting in the back of one of these, they probably have a lot of work to do. The interior in the back here, what a huge difference, huge difference to the normal S-Class. You can see the normal S-Class, even in long wheelbase form, still has fantastic legroom, etc. But I don't know whether it's the materials being used, because even your leather, you've got your leather finished all on the headlining here as well with the stitching. It's that lovely soft nappa that we talked about as well. But the space available to you, that extra size of window that you saw previously, it makes a huge difference. The other thing you notice immediately is the floor mats, the thick pile of them. Like, you can make patterns within it. It's makes a big difference, even with me wearing my shoes here. And the actual seats, again, look at the size of the cushions here. And again, trimmed, it's that same lovely soft nappa actually. Got Maybach on the back here as well. piping, a lot of workmanship gone into that. And in fact, the belts, look at the belts as well, very soft. They seem to have a lot more material in there than your standard belt. So we've got our rear window roller blind as well, and a similar one on the back. All can be controlled from here. I can also control the roof as well, but I'm not going to do that, otherwise our nice camera here is going to fall out. Then you have the infotainment screen in front, and this has got the full MBUX, so I can control everything here sitting in the rear, and this allows the passenger to control every aspect of the car, be it like the ambient lighting. I can switch now. If we go into here, go to color, get some multicolor in here with the green, for example, that switches immediately. Or we can go to the full multicolor version, which is actually quite nice, and I think it suits the Maybach quite a bit. So that's something simple. Or I can swipe down and then decide which content goes to which screen, all from here, being the controlling passenger. Or we can, for example, use the MBUX voice control assistant, and it'll know that I'm talking, and we'll see it pulsating here. So, hey Mercedes.
How can I help?
I'd like a massage, please.
I'm switching on the massage for you.
So there you go, I can do that, just sitting here. It knows that it's me talking, and look, it's still listening here. My bum is cold.
Seat heating is
There you go.
on.
It's done. So it continues to listen as it's doing now. You can see it pulsating, and it pulsates near the person who's talking. And this light bar, to me, it's absolutely revolutionary. I love it. This waterfall-like trim in the middle as well, we first saw it in the concept for the Maybach GLS, translated really nicely into the production car now as well. And you'll see the Maybach logo at the top there as it's strewn throughout the car. One thing I really like for the rear passenger is getting the view of the front seats, because you get the ambient lighting around it with the nice wood trim, with the lines within it. And it's just, I can imagine this at night being even more stunning than it is in the daytime. And the ambient lighting within the newer Mercedes is really, I mean, look how bright this is. Normally you wouldn't really perceive ambient lighting during the day, but they've done a really good job on making sure it's nice and bright, but not blinding at any point. Now the rear seats have as much options as you would find on the front seat. So if we go into the comfort settings here, you've got side bolsters, you've got your lumbar, you've got the climate control of the seat, so different hot points, etc. Seat positioning, you've got all the massage functions that you find in the front are available in the back, and indeed even the vitality programs of energizing comfort, all available here in the rear. And of course, it sounds like an obvious thing to say, but it's not the case in every manufacturer that you get every single option on the rear seats, because the rear seats are usually a downgraded version of the much larger and more sophisticated front seats, and that's not the case in Maybach. Right, now to the drink test, which is going to be interesting. David, what driving mode are we in at the moment?
We should be in comfort, which is the standard one. Yes, we are.
Could we switch it into comfort Maybach? Right, now that should be, I assume, our most comfortable mode. So I'm going to live life on the edge. I'm going to take the lid off. Tell you what, look, that's not shaking at all. Don't know if you guys can see that in the camera. I'm going to make sure you can. How stable is that? And these are South Bucks roads, which are rubbish, by the way. And the Maybach is, well, I'm quite happy in the Maybach. This is impressive. This is really, really impressive. That'd be interesting. I'm going to take the car for a quick drive in a minute, and then we'll perceive what the Maybach comfort mode is like versus the normal modes. It'd be quite interesting to see how the suspension and the drive mode itself differs. One thing I'm noticing, I've actually got heating here as well on your armrest. I wonder if it's, yeah, here as well. So it's not just your seat that gets heating, it's in fact the surrounding areas where the passenger puts their arms, etc. Again, that's quite clever. So another thing I can do, I can actually put my coffee in here, and there's a button to keep it warm, or to cool it down if you wanted to do that. So that's all possible, and then it turns to that colour. Very easy to use, very useful. Another really cool function for this seat is how you can get even more legroom. Of course, this is available in the normal S-Class as well, but it's even more exaggerated in Maybach. By holding down the button on the door there, and you'll see the front seat fold all the way forward, and you get a huge amount of space. It's that airline type seat that you get then in the back of the Maybach. Right, now I'm going to jump in the front and let's see what this S680 is like. Particularly, I want to see what that Maybach mode is like. Now here we are doing quite an exaggerated turn. And they're not lying when they say it's like an A-Class. Really, really is quite obvious. So I didn't think I'd be driving a V12 in a Mercedes anytime soon. There was an announcement that confused people a couple of years ago saying that AMG are no longer doing V12s in the S-Class, but of course that was AMG saying it as opposed to Mercedes-Benz. We knew back then that Maybach would continue to do it, though I did have my doubts when the GLS showed up without one in the 580, but it's nice to see it back here in the S-Class, if nothing else, but to link nicely with the history of the S-Class and the V12 with the Maybachs. But of course, in this car, much more a tool for a purpose rather than having a nice big stonking and characterful engine like you would do in an AMG. So in this, when you pick up speed, particularly in Maybach mode, it delivers the power in a way that is unobtrusive to the people within the car. So, like, we have our coffee here. It's not going to start sloshing about even if I put my foot down. I do get the power eventually, but it's given to you in a kind of gradual way, which is quite nice. You link that, of course, to the suspension. I know these roads very well here in South Bucks. As I said, they are awful. And while I can feel the vibration of the road coming through, which is something you want as a driver, it's otherwise indiscernible in terms of it's not jarring you. You feel absolutely cosseted. Is it that much better than a normal S-Class? I think the normal S-Class is so fantastic by itself that it's hard for me to perceive this being any better. And I did just drive that car as well. So can I feel anything? Maybe a slight improvement. I don't know how different the air suspension is in this versus that. It might just be the tuning of it, for example. But if anything, that's a testament to how good the S-Class in general is, particularly in this generation. I really like the driver's zone, even more when driving. That feeling of depth that you get is accentuated in the Maybach driver's zone because you have the little Maybach logos in the background and then you have your information just in front of that, which is more legible. If I turn off the 3D now, I can't perceive it as well. I turn the 3D on, and because it's tracking my eyes, I can now read the amount of miles that the car has done in the Maybach logo that much clearer, and then the actual dials themselves are floating out in front of me. I almost feel like I can grab them. I love that element of the 3D display. You can see the ambient lighting here flashing red, as I showed you on the normal S-Class. Such a great use of lighting technology. It's not about making the car a disco, particularly not in the new S-Class. That warns the driver that they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And again, it's a brilliant safety feature. You'll note also setting off from zero, no jerkiness, the power delivery, very, very smooth indeed. Again, putting your foot down in Maybach mode, very gradual. I'm not used to that when I plant my foot to the floor. It does feel very, very different to your comfort mode in your normal S-Class, but in a good way for, I'm sure, a driver. So guys, I've really enjoyed driving this, though honestly it is something that you do want to be driven around in. Driver pleasure is not something that one would liken to a Maybach, not in the traditional sense anyway. Undoubtedly, it's very easy to drive for such a large car. The steering is fantastic, the rear wheel steer helps immensely in low speeds, and I'm sure if you did higher speeds, you just get more stability because the wheels are turning the right way, but it's in the back. The back is where the Maybach really shines. And like I said, with the normal S-Class, it's this idea of luxury in technology that you won't find in any other brand. Yes, the Rolls-Royce and the Bentleys of the world, they have their prestige, the interiors are fantastic, the exteriors are so opulent, but where they are decades behind is this idea of luxury in technology. Stuff like the ambient lighting, stuff like the voice control assistant, the content sharing, every element of this car that makes the new S-Class the technological king, you'll find the rivals are decades behind it. So guys, if you've enjoyed this, as always, please do like, subscribe and share it. I'm going to park this up and instead, I think I'd like to be driven. See you next time.